Continuing in chapters 11 through 15, we're going to talk about life in the North in the mid 1800s. The United States is getting really divided between the North and the South. The main issue between the two is slavery. Slavery is illegal in the North and it is legal in the South. So, since they didn't have slaves, they didn't have very many farms and plantations in the North. They had a lot of factories. So factories were the main source of employment in the North in the mid 1800s. And the conditions in these factories were awful, very, very poor. Um, but there weren't a lot of options for jobs, so people really had no choice. They had to do these jobs, but they were dangerous and they were hot in the summer. They were cold in the winter. It wasn't uncommon for people to lose limbs while working. It was dangerous. And the workers wanted higher pay and better conditions, so they formed what are called unions. And a union is a group of people that get together to get better conditions. Like I said, it would be like if I went to my boss and said, I want more money, or I'm going to quit. My boss would probably say, well, thanks for working here and have a good life. He's not going to give me the money. Now, if me and every other teacher went to our boss and said, we want more money or we're going to quit, they're going to listen to us because they can't have us all quitting at the same time. So that's a union. And bosses typically don't like unions because unions have a power. And at this time, unions were not even legal. So the people would go on strike. And I'm sure you've heard of people going on strike and maybe holding picket signs. Okay. And those are like, wooden signs that have, hey, give us more money or, help our conditions or just something like that. And when they would go on strike on hold the picket signs, they would get arrested. Uh, but eventually it did help their cause, and unions did eventually become legal, and people were able to get a lot of money, or not a lot of money, but able to get more money. There were also lots of immigrants in the North. Um, there were two main groups of immigrants that came. The first came from Ireland, and the reason they came from Ireland is they had a potato famine. What that means is they basically had rotten potatoes. Potato crops went really bad, and people would get sick and in many cases die from the potatoes. And many of the farmers lost their crops forever because people weren't going to eat any more potatoes from any of these fields because they could die. And they couldn't farm potatoes anymore. Over 1.5 million people, 1.5 million people came from Ireland to the United States during this time. And they immigrated here during this time because of the potato famine. Germany was the other place that sent a lot of people over. And the reason they did is they had a revolution going on. And it was kind of a violent, dangerous revolution. And a lot of people were scared and nervous about what was going on. It was very chaotic. So a lot of them just left and went to the United States. The United States was growing. People were moving there. We were letting anyone in pretty much. So German people came here to get away from what was going on there. Well, a lot of the Americans were not happy with these immigrants coming over. Why were they not happy? Well, they were afraid that the immigrants were going to take their job or maybe take their land. Can you imagine how awful it would be for someone to come from Europe and steal your land? Well, why is that ironic? Which it is very ironic. And well, that's exactly what we did for hundreds of years to the Native Americans, to the Indians. We came over and we stole their land. So we were worried that people were going to do this. And we're like, oh, we can't have people coming and doing this. So we had fighting amongst ourselves because we were afraid that people would come and basically do what we had been doing for a couple hundred of years. So you need to make sure you understand the reason why that is ironic. And that is all for Life in the North. Our last day of notes for these chapters is Life in the South.